Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. But this Patreon-sponsored episode is sure as hell not a bad comic. If you've been here for the long haul, then you may recall all the way back in the Superman at Earth's End review, where I opened it briefly talking about this book. To understand this story, we need to understand the context of superhero comics at the dawn of the new millennium. Moral compasses of society change over time. What is considered okay or appropriate or even good or bad has changed. Popular opinions about what is right and just and decent will evolve. In turn, our media reflects those changes, and thus paragons of what is good must, in turn, reevaluate their ethics and determine whether they need to change. Superheroes, thus, have evolved over time to reflect the ethos of the people making them, what pop culture says is good and right during their present. You can see it especially as the Bronze Age of comics emerged. Suddenly, superheroes faced problems that can't be punched or put in jail. From the Bronze Age into the Dark Age, you have reevaluations of what it means to be a superhero, how to actually help the world. You can create a direct line from Squadron Supreme's 1985 maxi series, wherein the titular heroes try to turn the Earth into a utopia, directly to a 1999 book called The Authority. In between, you have the time of heroes getting darker and more violent to respond to a darker and more violent world, as conceived by writers who were no longer restrained by an idealism of ages past. Heroes could use guns, could kill, could grit their teeth and never smile, in many cases indistinct from the villains they were fighting. And sure, many lamented it even at the time, but the changes were always going to occur eventually. To quote Mr. Spock, change is the essential process of all existence. Superheroes and their ethics were always going to change, because they had to if they wanted to stay relevant and interesting. And that brings us back to The Authority. The Authority was a Wildstorm book originally written by Warren Ellis that spun out of Stormwatch, that book I reviewed the 0th issue of a few years ago, as well as its later integration into the DC Universe post-New 52, a secret United Nations force of superheroes designed to keep watch over the Earth. They were disbanded just prior to the Authority for a few reasons that aren't really relevant, although that does include the fact that they fought the xenomorphs from Alien, some of them died, and that story is considered canon. The premise was that several former members of Stormwatch and other heroes banded together in a powerful alien spacecraft to basically say, screw it, we don't need the backing of the United Nations, we're gonna protect the Earth no matter what it takes without answering to any other authority. In the first 12 issues, Warren Ellis's run, the book was pretty good. There was still a bit of edgelordness at times, but the characters had very real moments of humanity. Some of the things they did to stop threats were a bit morally questionable, but ultimately they were always trying to save lives and dealt with very science fiction-y kind of threats. Its downside really was that each storyline was only 4 issues long, and thus there were a lot of ideas that could have expanded the story more, but ended up just being footnotes in them as a result. But that's not terrible. Really, when I was reading this stuff in anticipation of this review, the thought that occurred to me was, wow, this is clearly what Mark Millar wanted to do with the Ultimates, but sucked at. So anyway, Mark Millar took over the book after Warren Ellis left. Reading those first 12 issues, I was a bit confused about why What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way was a direct response to it. And then I read some of Mark Millar's run, and it all clicked into place. This is what it's an answer to. Suddenly, the team of very professional, imaginative, and interesting characters who didn't want to kill, but believed that sometimes it's necessary to stop a threat, became a bunch of smug jackasses who constantly swear, talk crudely, and happily discuss how they're gonna murder their opponents, and then openly do so by flying at super speed through someone's head or the like. They slaughter, admittedly, totalitarian governments with no plan in place to rebuild nations other than take on refugees in their massive spaceship. They fight a thinly veiled pastiche of Marvel heroes who are only worse than them because they're also extremely bigoted and happy to murder innocent people in the process. Hell, their boss seems to be like a disgusting parody of Jack Kirby for no reason other than, lol, look at how edgy I am! Which, come to think of it, is pretty much Mark Millar's entire wheelhouse, so I don't know why I'm surprised. Who'd have thought Trouble was actually one of his less awful works? Inexplicably, this stuff was popular. It wasn't topping sales charts, but the readership was growing over time, which is an uncommon thing these days outside of temporary sales gimmicks like crossovers and variant covers. The sales orders between the Authority and Action Comics were comparable to each other. not great, but consistent, and indeed growing at times, with the Authority even overtaking the premier book of Superman. And thus, with that popularity and people showing support and love for a group that basically said, we'll do what we want with our power, just be grateful we're somewhat nice and think racism and homophobia are bad. Except when we do it. The question reared its ugly head. Are traditional superheroics pointless? Naive? Should Superman and heroes like him be willing to kill people with their power to match the supposedly far more successful and effectively brutal tactics of groups like the Authority? And please, no pedantics about, well, Superman did kill this one time in this canon story, or anything like that. Aside from circumstances being contrived to do such a thing, it doesn't mean the story is good, or if they even still considered it canon by that point. And more importantly, you know what we're really talking about. Should Superman just put his fist through Lex Luthor's face to end him? That sort of thing. Because that's what the Authority did. That is what is at the heart of this story, a complete and fundamental shift in the morality of mainstream superheroes. And don't think it hasn't happened before. Even Captain America, the dude who punched Hitler, at one point in time thought killing was always wrong, absolutely. The moralities of our heroes can shift with a change in popular opinion. So, why not Superman? In 2001, writer Joe Kelly had an answer, the comic we're going to review today. Most of you are probably more familiar with this story thanks to its animated adaptation, Superman vs. the Elite, and it is a very faithful adaptation, owing mostly to Joe Kelly being the writer of said adaptation as well. Little details were changed, a battle on Io became a battle on Earth's moon sort of thing, backstories and the like were expanded for the sake of movie length. It's definitely one of the better DC straight-to-video animated movies, but we're concerned with just the comic that spawned it. So let's dig into Action Comics number 775, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way?
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara. I believe in a thing called love. Justice and tyrant of my heart. There's a chance we can make it now. When I look into this one.
The cover is bad. Yeah, sorry, for such a critically acclaimed book, highly celebrated and beloved, this is just an awful cover. It's Superman kneeling, or standing? I thought he was kneeling, but actually looks more like he's trying his best to do the splits here. Amidst some wreckage, his eyes are glowing red, the area seems to be devastated. Honestly, it looks like he did it himself, especially with the red eyes. Also, his cape has cracks in it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Those aren't folds. It's like it was a solid piece and it was fragmenting. Maybe it's supposed to be dirt, but it doesn't look like it, and none of the rest of him is like this. I mean, you combine this image with the title, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and it looks like Superman is being immensely serious about it. You think there's something funny about those? Well, so did this building behind me! We open on Superman flying over the Earth on his way to Libya, where a terrorist attack has taken place. It only takes him about 4 minutes to fly from Metropolis to Tripoli, but right before he gets there, the terrorist threat is ended. Admittedly, this is the DC universe, and before 9/11, so terrorist attack in this case equals giant cyborg gorilla. It was also holding a giant gun, which just seems like overkill at that point. But yeah, that thing's dead as hell, and probably several thousand other people too, by the looks of it. We cut to the Daily Planet, where Jimmy Olsen is loudly complaining about another newspaper's scoop on the story, how the gorilla was brought down by 4 people known as the Elite. Perry White is equally unimpressed. The Elite saves Tripoli. I'm sure the families of 2,000 soldiers feel saved. I mean, not to side with the Elite, but they did technically save it. The headline is not inaccurate, not even particularly inflammatory or misleading. Days like this, I really, really wish I knew more swear words. Doesn't matter, Jimmy, the comic would still censor them. Giant bloody hole in a gorilla, though, that's perfectly fine to show. Clark Kent is reporting on the scene and communicating with the planet from there. Manchester Black, apparent leader of the group, told a Libyan general, "The old ways are dead. Trust me, in less than a year, you'll love me for this." They forgot to mention he followed that up by severing the man's legs at the shins using only his mind. New headline, "The Elite saves General from athlete's foot." The reporter who wrote up those details, Jack Ryder, aka the anti-hero The Creeper, enters and defends his story. And unfortunately, I have to give a bit of a critique of the book. I'm not really a big fan of Doug Mahnke's art as it is. He's another artist where everyone looks like they're scowling, even when they're smiling. But he really dropped the ball on this page. Clark Kent and Jack Ryder are drawn almost exactly the same. Like, Ryder has a different suit and scruffier hair, but just glancing at the page, I keep thinking it's just Clark Kent has taken off his trench coat. Then you put them side by side like in these panels, and it's really evident. Speaking of these panels, Clark wants to know how he could portray such obvious murderers as heroes. Ryder says the military were about to do a lot more damage trying to fight the gorilla, and the Elite stopped it. Although I'm pretty sure he says it with a bit of racism in there too, because suddenly Jack Ryder is that much of a dick. The situation could have been contained without a single life lost. Superman! That would have been great. Enough monkey business, guys! I'm taking you and your terrorist chums downtown for a spanking. And 3 months later, it would happen all over again. You'll notice, however, that response did not actually address the point, that less lives would have been lost. He just complained because he saw Superman as corny or naive. Image is more important. The world is sick and broken, Kent. People want someone to fix it, not hand out slogans and bandages. I mean, I think the injured people might want some bandages at least. We cut over to the White House. This was during the time when Lex Luthor was president. God, I miss the days when that seemed unbelievable. And Lex is being informed that there's a considerable percentage of people who approve of the Elite's actions. What's more, the power levels that even one member of their team, Coldcast, is displaying could potentially rival Superman. The one called Coldcast blinked his eyes and shorted 15 satellites from 300 miles out. TV reception is regularly a problem when Coldcast isn't sleeping. The instant the Elite look crosswise at American citizens, we will turn them into cat food. British citizens, though, hamster chow. Until then, these people tend to mix with their own. Meta fighting metas for bragging rights. Dude, I just sliced off the legs of a Libyan general and killed a giant gorilla. Beat that! Release some statement condemning violence in all of its horrible forms. And meanwhile, we wait and see who's standing when the smoke clears.
I'm the government, I'm the reason nothing works.
The Elite release a manifesto onto every computer on Earth. They're the good guys, namely us, and they're the bad guys. Yeah, good guys are regularly known for having manifestos. We do not believe in nations. We do not believe in treaties or boundaries or classes or politics. We do believe in a thing called love, but only when we listen to the rhythm of our hearts. Basically, it says if you treat people like trash to further your own petty aims, they'll come down on you like an atom bomb. They're downloading data via post-dimensional probability runnel.
Using multimodal reflection sorting.
Superman starts using his own Kryptonian computer systems to try to track them, but his fingers move so fast that the keyboards start overheating and smoking. He's talking about this with Steel, who notes that the Elite seem to have gotten under his skin. Superman decides to wash off his skin with, like, lava? I don't know, maybe it's like mellow yellow or something. Point is, Superman does wonder for a moment if the world has moved on from them. Before they can really talk about it, there's an alert from Japan. Superman flies off as we see some news broadcasts where there's a ton of support for the Elite's activities. The Elite are here to stay! Who's strong enough to say otherwise? Okay, at the moment, nobody even knows what the Elite look like, and they've only done like one activity. Maybe it's time for people to cool their heels on how super mega awesome they're supposed to be? I mean, yeah, they took down a giant cyborg gorilla, but I can think of like 5 guys on the Justice League who could do that too. Anyway, Superman is intercepted by a group of Japanese supervillains and is knocked back. Before he can get his bearings again, the Elite arrive and quickly slaughter the villains. He's having trouble recovering from whatever hit him, but eventually gets back up, the Elite showing themselves. These are the 4 of them. Manchester Black is the dude in the Union Jack shirt. He's a powerful telekinetic. The guy behind him in chains is Coldcast, who can manipulate electromagnetism. I don't know why he's wearing all the chains, only that I think it might have been an iffy decision to make the black dude's outfit just a bunch of chains. The blue-haired dude is the Hat, a magic user who can conjure up stuff from his magical hat. And finally, Menagerie. Her outfit is made up of creatures called Symbeasts, basically weird alien creatures that are kind of like, say, Marvel symbiotes, but there are many of them all in one, and more bizarre in appearance. The Symbeasts can be used for various tasks and form into various objects, including wings for her to fly. What's interesting is that while this is meant to be a critique of the Authority, they're not really a pastiche of them in the traditional sense. Unlike Mark Millar's hugely unimaginative parodies of Marvel characters in his run, it's more about the attitude of the team than a one-to-one copy. There are references you could probably make. Menagerie being a flyer with wings is kind of similar to the Authority's Swift. Manchester Black wears a Union Jack t-shirt like Jenny Sparks did during the Warren Ellis run, but that's pretty much it. Anyway, they bring Superman back to their base of operations, where Coldcast explains that he's the one who took out Superman by accident. A high-frequency neutrino wash. He was using it to try to bring the villains down, but they were shielded. Manchester says that the villains were a group of genetically accelerated metahumans working for an isolationist faction of the government, planning on destroying Tokyo in another few seconds. Superman, however, objects to their need to kill the metas to stop them. That, or watch a live rerun of Hiroshima, only with blokes who can turn your guts inside out with their eyes. Don't even get me started on what they could have done with their elbows. Superman scoffs at their attitude, and ends justify the means kind of thing. Black tries to be diplomatic in return, explaining that their base is actually a bacteria colony from another dimension, a living spacecraft that they stole and brought back here, which they've nicknamed Bunny. This one is definitely more of a direct reference to the Authority, which also had a living spaceship, but their relationship with it was more benign, at least in the Warren Ellis issues. Never really saw them do much with it during the Mark Millar ones I read. Anyway, yeah, Superman just says he doesn't care if they're terrorists or armed rebels or anything like that. They are murdering people and calling themselves heroes, and he wants them to stop. Black thinks he's just jealous. You may not believe this, but as a kid, I used to love heroes, though I never used the word for us. Instead, I used a word that made us sound like snobs. That's what good guys do, right? Good, pounding the snot out of evil in bright tights. No questions. No grey areas. It was a perfect bloody dream for a boy who lost a mother to lung cancer and a father to Adolf. And then I woke up. Turns out I had wet the bed. Because I don't follow your systems, man! Masks are for hiding. Capes are for play. Tights actually do wonders for my bum, so I'm gonna keep wearing those. Villains don't share their plans before they smoke you, except in campaign speeches, or the pulpit, or in front of the classroom. This is the DC universe. They most assuredly still do that. I mean, have you met Dr. Savannah? Reality is a mite bloodier than sitcoms or comics. The grays stretch out farther. Okay, this one might be a direct reference to the Authority, wherein the Hulk parody directly said comic books are... well, there you are. And if you want to disregard what they say because, hey, it's a villain saying it, well, the leader of the Authority also tells the president, we're not like comic book heroes. It astounds me when I see writers in comics insulting comic books. It always comes off as so try-hard and immature. I'm not like those comics. Take me seriously. I'm an adult. Anyway, Superman says that he recognizes the darker elements of the world, but that they can't throw morality in the garbage because of difficult times. Black counters that he's privileged and hasn't encountered real difficult times, that survival sometimes means doing morally questionable things. They're human beings with the power to make a difference, and they're doing it their way. And they love us for it. I like that that is especially brought up because I think it really highlights another critique of the Authority, wherein they really embrace their celebrity status and use it for drugs, sex, and money. They can say it's about the greater good as much as they like, but it often comes across like they do care more about how they look than doing the right thing. Black says Superman can handle the traditional bad guys, but everyone else is going to be dealt with their way. Now be a good little dream and say, I understand, Mr. Black. Of course. Up yours, Dick Nose. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Cram it, puss lips. Yeah, I think I got it that time. Superman says he'll stop them, but they just teleport him down to Earth. Clark meets with his father and discusses all this, especially how people are more and more embracing the elite's point of view. Some folks, mostly loud and angry ones, others just scared. They look outside and see revolving doors on prisons, government corruption, maniacs hiding in the desert, children. Yes, children truly are the worst among all the things you listed. Well, what happens to children these days gets anyone's blood up. Damn kids and their fortnights. Sometimes truth, justice, and the American way just doesn't make them feel better. They want easy answers. Quick results. Damn it, Dad! It's almost as if nobody even listens to me when I say their problems are over there, and that over there needs to take care of it themselves. Clark asks if they're right, but of course Pa Kent says it isn't, but that you can't just talk someone down from that position. You need to lead by example. Clark thinks he's right, Pa Kent even saying that, hey, you can always just defeat them in battle if the lesson doesn't work. But Clark seems to indicate that he's not sure if he can actually win. After a quick montage of Superman observing people debating the elite, including some kids play-acting a fight between him and the elite, we get into something that was definitively not in the animated adaptation. A parody of the Men in Black who are attacking a city. It's only for like 2 pages, but it's just kind of weird that reference is in there. Anyway, Superman uses his knowledge of the aliens with them, who think water is a poison, to get them to surrender without a single person killed. He, of course, knows the elite are watching, and they show up. He says now he'll get the JLA to detain the aliens and then question the rogue DEO agents to find out who they are and what they want. But Black says he already knows who they are, mostly thanks to these same guys being responsible for Menagerie. Black says that these people are bad and that their trial will be a sham, just resulting in them training more people to be assholes. Then I'll stop them again, and again, and again if I have to, until they get the message. And I'll do it without melting anyone into slag for kicks. Superman! Not melting anyone into slag for kicks. Damn, you Americans like to hear yourselves yap. Okay, dude, you just gave us a whole friggin' monologue about who the aliens are and why you should be allowed to murder them after they've already been stopped. Don't claim Superman is the one who talks too much. Anyway, he tells the Hat to kill them all and then rain acid on their families to send a message. Remember, we're the good guys. Superman punches the Hat before he can do that, the hit getting seen by floating cameras that the elite brought with them, transmitting that to the world. Thanks for the just cause, mate. If you're not part of the solution, etc., etc. Tomorrow. And they teleport away. So, like, noonish? I just want to know if I have time to get lunch first. Actually, as Clark lays in bed with Lois, he says he's going to have the fight at dawn. Lois asks, as his wife, why he needs to do this and not bring in the JLA to help. The elite didn't take the fight to the JLA or the new gods or someone. They wanted me. No, you went to them. No, they threatened innocent people with acid and wanted to murder people already in custody. Just because Clark has been eager to take them down doesn't mean he started this conflict. Lois is genuinely concerned that the elite can beat him. He tells Lois about something he overheard during his excursion in the city. Kids playing as Superman and the elite. I heard a child tell his friend that he wanted to be in the elite, because it would be fun to kill bad guys. Fun to kill. Okay, but to be fair, Clark, have you played Doom Eternal? Because hot damn! People have to know that there's another way, Lois. They have to hear a voice of compassion and faith instead of spite and anger. They have to see that someone believes in humanity strongly enough to die for them. Okay, Lois, let's be real here. Dying in the DC universe is like taking a long weekend. You're back by Tuesday. He leaves a note for her and heads out at dawn, calling on the elite to finally end this. Time to wake up, little man. The dream is over. Well, good. I was tired of going to work naked every day. They want to throw down right away, even calling out body parts they want to take, but Superman asks them to not do it in the middle of a city. Black agrees, and they teleport to Jupiter's moon Io, with a little reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey thrown in, because why not? Let's not dwell on that. Superman makes one last appeal to them, that there's another path besides the violence they've chosen. This fight is being transmitted to the entire world, and I can't help but wonder if this message is meant for humanity as well, not just the elite. Anyway, Black of course refuses, and Superman gets tossed around. Rule number 1, he who has the power makes the rules. Rule number 2, no parking on Sundays. No one hits one of my people and walks. Well, that's easy, considering you just sent him flying. This isn't about love. It's about removing the cancers that fester in us and flushing them down the toilet. The people don't want babysitters in spandex to slap them on the wrist when they're bad. They want surgeons to cut the ugly bits from them and charge them through the moral nose. Dr. Manchester Black at your service. Okay, now we're getting into the real nitty-gritty of this whole thing. For additional points that I'm going to try not to repeat, check out SF Debris' review of Superman vs. the Elite. A lot of good stuff there that can be echoed here. As I brought up in the Superman 4 review, Superman is not a god. He's just a guy trying to do good wherever he can. Unilaterally declaring yourself to answer to no one, to make choices that will affect billions of people without even asking anybody first, does not make you someone in service of humanity, but rather placing yourself above them. And while Black is saying that people don't want babysitters in spandex, he made it clear with his first sentence that he does not care what people want. He who has the power makes the rules, he said. Might makes right. But to paraphrase my favorite movie, if superheroes are modern-day knight errants, then the code they should be following is might for right. Those who have power should use it only for that which is moral. No one hits one of my people and walks was the next thing he said. Basically, we are in charge. Defy us and you will die. What the elite and the authority promise is not a better world. It's just a world living in constant fear. Ordinary people have to be afraid of escalation. They have to be afraid of these super powerful beings suddenly deciding, you know what, you guys never vote for your own self-interest, so you don't get to vote anymore. They have to be afraid of being collateral damage because beings like them don't actually care about them. They claim to, but the truth is they just like flexing their might. They're hammers, and every problem looks like a nail. People have to be afraid that one day their masters will grow bored of them and wipe them out. After all, they already don't care about anything. Not lives, not treaties, not governments, not morality. So why would they care about the people they're supposed to protect? And let it not be said that I'm not fair. Even Mark Miller's book asked, hey, shouldn't we be concerned about that guy with godlike powers also being a heroin addict? I'm kinda iffy about him being a part of the good guys if this keeps up. Reality is pain, bile, and darkness. Reality rules. More on this in a bit. Anyway, yeah, the elite wail on Superman, dropping stuff on him, blood vessels bursting thanks to telekinesis, and finally Coldcast unleashing a massive energy field that blows Superman away, leaving only part of his cape. However, even as the Hat is pulling out champagne, Superman speaks to them. I finally get it now. Thank you. I've been trying to understand that Doge meme for years now, but I finally get it. I've made the mistake of treating you people like people. You will now be treated like gophers. Something hits Menagerie and her body goes wild. The Symbeast's basically not keeping calm and she collapses. The Hat says she's not breathing and Manchester wants Coldcast to blanket the area in his electromagnetic powers. But the blast that supposedly killed Superman has worn him out. Superman creates a massive sandstorm around them. Black protects Coldcast with a telekinetic field, but the Hat is out in the open. Normally his magic would protect him from any physical damage, but the wind speeds create a vacuum that sucks away all the air, collapsing his lungs. Superman then sends Coldcast away. He took a trip into space at Mach 7. If you had super hearing, you'd hear a pop in 10 seconds. That'll be the bubble wrap I put him in. Points to Monkey's art on this next page. This is an ugly Superman, and it's supposed to be ugly. It's supposed to look harsh and unattractive and everything you don't want to see out of the Man of Steel. And the torn S is a nice touch. How does it feel knowing that everything you thought you had has been taken away from you? How does it feel to have your flaws exploited, to be deconstructed? There are like 70 billion what if Superman was a bad guy stories, so let's act them out, shall we? How does it feel to watch dreams die? The dream of being a murderous douche canoe is gone forever. Black prepares to use his telekinesis to fight back, but Superman uses his heat vision, laser focused through Black's retinas, right into his brain. He says he used his X-ray vision to identify an unusual part of his brain, the source of his telekinesis, and cut it out, destroying his powers. He whacks Black around for good measure as he starts to cry, both terrified and outraged by this. His one recourse is to talk to the cameras that have been observing this and transmitting it to Earth, proclaiming that Superman is no better than they were. Yes, they did see, didn't they? They saw all the ugliness, the anger, and I bet it frightened them. It frightened me when I decided to cross the line. Do what you do. I was terrified. Thought it would be tough, but you know what? Anger is easy. Hate is easy. Vengeance and spite are easy. As was indicated by Jack Ryder's words at the beginning of the comic, there is a misconception that Superman is a big meathead who just delivers corny lines because that's the stereotype of superheroes. But superheroes have evolved. Their writing has gotten smarter. And consequently, Superman is not stupid. One of the greatest things about Superman is that he possesses all this power, all these abilities that any cynical person would say would corrupt and make him into a terrifying tyrant, but it didn't. He chose to use his powers for kindness, to be a good person, the kind of person who wouldn't murder everyone when he got angry, to always hold his power in check in a world full of cardboard to make sure that he never hurt innocent people. He got smarter because he needed to be smarter to ensure that he wouldn't take a life. It's not like he's never thought about doing these things. It's just he chose not to. He thought about it, he considered it, and he decided it was wrong. The elite have all that power and none of the wisdom. They're sloppy, they're arrogant, and they're cynical. A little imagination and they could use the magnificently broad powers they have to accomplish the same things they claimed to be about without a single life lost. But no, they think the world is ugly and mean, and so they got ugly and mean in response. It's easy to look at the terrible things happening at any given point in history and see all the examples of greed, corruption, and evil, but it's also easy to overlook the compassion, the decency, to see people being nice and good and wonderful. That's my deconstruction of superheroes. People can be and are kind. So why wouldn't someone with incredible abilities be kind too? Anyway, as Superman himself says, he doesn't like his heroes ugly and mean, doesn't believe in it, which is why he didn't kill the elite. They're all unconscious, and the Justice League have commandeered Bunny, who of course as a living being they were able to communicate with, and it is more than happy to be free of them. Hell, he didn't even destroy Black's powers. He gave him the equivalent of a concussion, nullifying his powers temporarily until the authorities can come by and put on psychic dampeners to hold him back. Black is pissed, saying that Superman should have just killed them all. So long as a heart beats in my chest, I'll come after you, you poncy twit! If you think this is over, you're living in a bloody dream world! You know what, Black? I wouldn't have it any other way. Dreams save us. Dreams lift us up and transform us. And on my soul, I swear, until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice become the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting. Ever. Although, I suppose we could set up a superhero Black Ops team to deal with darker threats in the world with your sister leading them, and put Cassandra Cain on it. Oh, and Cold Cast too! No hard feelings, dude! And so our comic ends with Superman flying off. You know you guys are still on Io, right? Might want to teleport back to Earth, especially since you're not exactly looking in great shape, Clark. This comic is great, and I think you all know that by now. It does feel a little skimmed down in places, especially in terms of individual characterization and motivation for members of the elite, but it hits the important elements. Quiet moments of contemplating and debate from Superman to his friends and loved ones, seeing that people have varying opinions about the elite's position, and it doesn't really have an easy answer for some of the stuff Black says, just that it's more important to stick to morality than to embrace the darker elements of our nature. After all, how can we make the world a better place to live the dream if we're not willing to try to live up to the better world? One could argue that it's more interested in trying to parody and deconstruct the authority that it detracts from the narrative, but I don't think so. As I said, Superman vs. the Elite served to expand the story in all the right ways, and it helps having the original writer on board, with many lines lifted straight from the comic, and a few others slightly modified. Monkey's art might not be my favorite, but he especially has a dirty quality to a lot of his art that's served well in some areas, like the ugly Superman, or the Elite's much grimmer visages. And I especially like the ending lines, recontextualizing that old Superman motto, fighting a never-ending battle. It's not never-ending because it's a cause that will never be won, but because he'll never give up on his dream. This is not the first time Superman has been confronted by this kind of thinking, and it will not be the last, but this is definitely one of the best examples of Superman sticking to his principles and winning through on them. Next time, the build-up for the 600th episode begins, and as such, I need a bit more time to work on it, so let's have ourselves some more comic book quickies! One of our first gigs, these obelisks popped up all over the solar system. Turned out they were mega ovum prepping to hatch, and Mama was an act of God with an attitude. Figured if there was nothing left alive for her to hatch, maybe she'd stay home. This one was the farthest along. Generated its own O2 up here. Sort of a cutie in a dead alien baby kind of way. So in the DC universe, the monoliths weren't full of stars, but dead alien babies? Hello, my friends. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.